This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Why Small Business Matters, the podcast that provides a platform for successful small business leaders to tell their stories. My name is Matt Sutherland, and along with my fellow podcast presenter, Sarah Stevenson, we welcome two influential business brains, active in the business world, who will be sharing their experience and advice on the challenges facing SMEs today.
And today we're delighted to be joined by Charlotte Keenan and Michael Hayman. Charlotte leads the Office of Corporate Engagement's International Responsibilities at Goldman Sachs and serves as Global Head of 10,000 Women. She's a member of the EMEA Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and having joined Goldman Sachs in 2015 as an Executive Director, was named Managing Director in 2019. Prior to joining the firm, Charlotte was Chief Executive of Tony Blair's Foundation and previously worked in banking at JP Morgan Cazenove in London and Jefferies & Co in Houston. Charlotte also serves as Chair of the Expert Advisory Council for the UK Government's Help to Grow management programme for small businesses. We're also delighted to be joined by Michael Hayman, Chair and co-founder of the campaign firm Seven Hills. Michael is an entrepreneur, broadcaster, author and campaigner for the ideal of business as a force for good. He's chair of the Small Business Charter, the award for the UK's world-class business schools, and is a member of the UK Government's Help to Grow Management Advisory Council. He's the national chair of entrepreneurs at the private bank and wealth manager Coutts, and co-founded the national campaign for early stage enterprise Startup Britain, which was launched by the then Prime Minister David Cameron and fully supported by Her Majesty's government. Let's kick off. You've both got extremely impressive CVs and biographies, but I just wonder whether you can give our listeners an insight into what motivates you to get up in the morning and makes you excited to turn up for work. Charlotte, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'll kick off. So I work at Goldman Sachs, where I'm responsible for all of our corporate engagement internationally. And what that means is really focusing on how Goldman Sachs shows up in our communities. What we're doing for those around us, how we are using our capital, our convening power, our insights to really inform and shape, ultimately with the goal of supporting economic growth, which is where 10,000 Small Businesses comes in. So I'd say that's a key part of my day job, and I often say to people that I've got probably the best job in the firm, because through 10,000 Small Businesses, we support high growth SMEs across the United Kingdom. We also run the programme in France and the US, but really for those business owners and founders to take them to the next level. And that's a pretty awesome place to be, because not only have I got the support and the infrastructure of an organisation like Goldman, what I spend my days doing is working with people like Michael and bringing partners to bear and bringing the resources of the firm to bear to help some of Britain's most exciting entrepreneurs. And so to date, we have trained over 2,000, and they are some of the most dynamic, exciting, high energy, smart individuals that I've ever had the good fortune of working with. And so I find that I learn every single day. I find that I learn from different stories, different perspectives. And so it's really what gets me up. It's the fact that I'm learning from many different people, and I get energized from spending my time with individuals like that.
Well, I'd build on that and very, very much identify with everything Charlotte said there. I think if you get to work with entrepreneurs, if you get to work with small businesses, you do see one of the most dynamic parts of the economy in a very real way. And my day job has always been about working with entrepreneurs, and it's a real passion area for me, because I think when you're looking at people that change things, whether it's contributions to communities through to creating the kind of game-changing products and services of the future. I mean, a lot of that comes from people with an idea that they want to take to market. And I think that, however however you look at that along the continuum from people that just want to run a small business well to those that actually want to become a real kind of agent of change and do something on a global level. It's a really dynamic space and an exciting space, and one where you get so much positivity, you can't help but get out of bed with a smile on your face about it, because it's a sort of it demands it, right? And I think it's where you see so much optimism at play, and it's a sort of wonderful part of the world to be working with. My day job is very much on the marketing, communication, and campaigning aspects around that, but obviously working on on the Help to Grow management side of it through the Small Business Charter is the other side of of that mirror, I guess.
Charlotte, you mentioned 10,000 small businesses, and Michael, you mentioned the Help to Grow management program. These are two dedicated business growth programs aimed at supporting small businesses. But what type of business enrolls on these type of programs?
I think it really is the variety, and look, I mean, reflecting on both of them. So we've been running 10,000 small businesses in the UK since 2009, and I chair the advisory council for Help to Grow, which started a couple of years ago under the former Chancellor. And fundamentally, both programs are pretty similar in that they get the goal that you need to support the business founder and the business leader, and you need to give them the skills and the opportunity, but frankly, the headspace, the networking, the peer-to-peer support that they need to grow their businesses. So the profile, look, I mean, there's similarities between both programs. Equally, they're very different in market. Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small businesses. We work with about 200 to 300 businesses a year. Help to Grow, we're obviously working with many thousands of businesses a year across the country. So, as I was discussing with Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor, in some ways best to think about it as Help to Grow as the scaled version of 10,000 small businesses. And the reason that the government set up Help to Grow was really a recognition based on the evidence that we have seen from 10,000 small businesses that these programs work, right? And they work, and they're not just a nice thing for the business owners to do. They work in terms of increasing revenue growth. They work in terms of increasing the number of jobs that these businesses are generating. They're giving business leaders the skills, whether it's taking on external finance, whether it's thinking better how to manage their teams, whether it's thinking through the sustainability challenges or, the Brexit challenges or internationalization or, and frankly, all the opportunities that those factors throw up. So, we also believe that diversity is the key to success, right? And actually, in all the classrooms and cohorts, the more diverse, the better. I'd say the one common stream and goal, certainly for our Goldman Sachs program, is we want businesses who are ambitious, right? We want business leaders who are growth hungry and want to take their business to the next level. But in any classroom, we will have, gin distillers, marketeers, construction companies, service companies, food provision, you name it, because I really believe that diversity is key and it helps the learning process, but also the challenges that a small business leader faces are pretty consistent, regardless of what sector you're in. I don't know, Michael, what you would comment on that and agree with that.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And, I think speaking on a personal level, I mean, I founded my business in 2010 and, would reflect that point of the story of a long-term under-provision of training for small firms and entrepreneurs. And actually, 10,000 small businesses was relatively new into the marketplace in those early years, and stood alone in many ways as being a really significant piece of training and of support for small firms. And if I reflect on the Startup Britain campaign, which I co-created, was that that celebrated, I guess, the the small business renaissance, huge numbers of businesses being created every year, a story which has gone on. There are 800,000 small firms created every year now in the UK, but actually how you give them better survival prospects, and actually how you give them the sort of the tools to survive and thrive are more than just sort of like academic points. I mean, they're very real stories that people go through when they put everything on the line to actually to create their own firm. So I think at both a sort of micro level of experiencing the first couple of years in business, which I remember one entrepreneur called it the valley of death. That kind of like very, very large numbers of small firms don't survive those first few years in business. And that kind of access to training, skills and know-how is a really important part of the survival kit. And I think especially now, these are very tough times for small firms in general. And I think that making sure that there is ever more provision to actually help those companies sort of prosper is a really important priority. And I think I just echo Charlotte's point, which is that I think Help to Grow was a really important part of the answer to that.
Here at Northumbria, we have been supporting SMEs for decades, and maybe more intensively over the last 10 years. And these business growth programs, as we talk about, have been a great vehicle for supporting small businesses. But Michael, why is it so important? Why is it so important to help small businesses, and especially now?
Nesta, the charity and research company, came up with a very interesting statistic some years ago, which they call the vital 6% of companies that create 54% of all net new jobs. And they tend to be entrepreneurial businesses. They tend to be young businesses. They tend to be inexperienced businesses, but they're hungry for growth. And so they are net new employers. They are disproportionately important for things like the tax take, and they are hugely important when you look at things like the innovation landscape. So it's very important that we have a thriving entrepreneurial baseline in the UK, because that is where there are so many exciting points of progress will come from in the future. And I think I sort of think about that sort of period of time that I've been working. I mean, many of the businesses that were were even dreams. Businesses like Airbnb, Uber, many other sort of companies. They were not even functioning businesses back in the sort of early 2000s. Now look at it, and of course things happen very quickly, and they happen amongst that dynamic entrepreneurial part of the economy. So nationally we have something at stake here, which is that we need to be very much sort of seen as an entrepreneurial nation to make progress. But I think that speaks to the ultra high ambitious point to it. But I also think that small firms are the bedrocks of local communities, and I think you can look at strong civil society alongside strong economic and entrepreneurial bases as being very good reflections of each other. And you find that a lot of small firms, whether it's running news agents or whether it's running small manufacturing businesses, are very, very important parts of the, I suppose, that social infrastructure. So it's very much in our interest to support it and see it thrive.
Yeah, and I just throw in a couple more stats there, Michael, to back up your Nesta stats. I mean, the last count, 17 million jobs in this country are in small businesses, and it's over 50% of private sector revenue is generated by small firms. So if we're going to grow and we're going to grow our economy, we have to invest and we have to support this population. And again, for all the points that you eloquently mentioned, Michael, that the innovation, the ideas, and you highlighted some of the great British success stories in there. But I agree with you. I think it is absolutely to the point that small businesses are the bedrock and foundation of communities. We saw that during the pandemic, right? And the move to support small, the move to support local. And what that does for a community, village, town, region. Now more than ever, we need small businesses and we need to support small businesses, right? And we need to give them every tool in their armour to get to get through what's ahead. But I'm aware that also sounds quite negative. And just to, we had 20 or so of our small business alumni here at our Goldman Sachs headquarters a couple of weeks ago for just a kind of a roundtable discussion again. What are the key things that are front of mind? And I kind of opened the discussion on, my goodness, we're all together. It's really tough out there. Inflation, energy costs, talent shortages, etc. And I hit the tone completely wrong, because all of them were doing really well. They're all the mindset that they see opportunity in a crisis, and I think that's the underlying nature of some of the really talented entrepreneurs in this country, is they have exactly the mindset that when things are turbulent, when things are difficult, they find opportunity and they thrive. So, I look at our exporters in our population, right? And, the diversification and the internationalization that they've spent, the last number of years building up, they are doing staggeringly well at the moment. So, all of this just ties back to that first point, is, why we get up in the morning. And I think it's because when you see the dynamic, gritty, resilience that these businesses demonstrate, it's pretty humbling and it's pretty impressive.
Can I just build on that as well? Because I think there is that. I think there's an element of showing the right stuff. There's the right character. But there is also something about the right contribution, about why these businesses matter, Matt, to your question, is that, because I think about something like the whole debate about business as a force for good and an agent of change. I mean, if you look at something like B corporations, I mean, that is overwhelmingly populated now by small and growing firms that would come under a kind of small to medium-sized enterprise sort of, categorization. And I think, a lot of small businesses have got a real sense of trying to make a difference. And I think that whether that's on, a kind of global stage where, you want to be a Paul Lindley sort of changing the way that kids sort of consume sugar, and you create Ella's Kitchen as a result. We know that's one good answer. Or you want to be a great local employer and you want to do things the right way. That's also an answer. So I think there is an element that, when you look at this sort of debate about business as agents of change and innovators that are going to come up with ideas from everything from, the way we consume goods and services of the future to, frankly, some of the big answers to things like health, medicine, climate. It's going to be entrepreneurs, it's going to be small firms that become larger firms that are going to be a big part of that answer. And they are the big bets on the table for the economy. And that's why they need to be, properly supported and properly sort of given every opportunity to make that difference.
Can I just go back to Charlotte's point about, when you were in the room with small businesses and perhaps you got the pitch slightly wrong in terms of tone. We also find that people who are coming to us to do the Help to Grow programme, most of them are really optimistic about their future and looking for growth opportunities. But I agree with you. A lot of what they say is that they do feel quite lonely, perhaps if they're running the business pretty much alone, and the value of mentoring and what we provide on Help to Grow, which is the 10 hours of one-to-one mentoring. I just wondered whether, Michael, setting up your own business, and Charlotte, in your career in banking and so on, whether mentors have been important for you.
100%. I think mentors are used properly, right? And I think, again, it's a term that, many people put many different interpretations onto it. But a mentor used well, I think that can be one of the most invaluable relationships that there is. So, both in Help to Grow and in 10,000 Small Businesses, it's a key component of the programme. And the other piece that, I would add on to that is we see our small businesses mentoring and providing that support to each other, whether that's on an informal basis or even sitting and supporting each other on their boards, for example. But going back to me and the question that you asked, yes, I would say that every single moment I've been at a loss in my career, or thinking about the next thing, or looking for the next challenge, or uncertain as to how to handle something, having that person, and whether it's inside the organisation or outside the organisation. At Goldman, I'm incredibly blessed that we have a very, very strong apprenticeship and mentoring culture, and so I have a number of people that within the firm I would go to, and I would just say, I'm struggling with X. How do you think I should handle it? And it's it's the best advice that you can get.
I totally agree with that. And I mean, I've had a mentor for a long time. I suppose the thing is that they're quite accidental characters that come into your life for very specific reasons. I think the great thing about the course, of course, is that there's more design to it. I mean, one thing I would say is I spent the summer going to quite a number of our business schools that are delivering Help to Grow, and I'm just thinking about two meetings that I had, one in Strathclyde and one in Portsmouth, meeting businesses that had been on the course. And I think that, first of all, they definitely did respond to this point about, feeling alone and feeling more confident as a result of having gone through the course, because, this creation of almost like a peer group to actually grow alongside. Especially in women-led businesses as well. That was a big thing of actually feeling that there was, permission, that there was confidence, that there was a lot of things that were almost more intangible byproducts of the course, by being a part of a community. And I think feeling about the kind of what comes next through mentoring was definitely reflected in terms of the experience, practical experience of those businesses having been on the course. And interestingly, many of them who'd been on the very first cuts of the course now wanted to give back themselves as mentors. It wasn't just one-way traffic. I think the interesting thing to think about with Help to Grow is where this might go when we've got 30,000 businesses that have been through it, and when those businesses have been catalysed to be part of a much more active sort of community of companies that can help others and be a part of a really special, I think, ecosystem.
No, I was just going to leap in there and build on that, which is this kind of concept of growth heroes, and really picking up what you've just said, Michael, that small businesses look to other small businesses and other relevant success stories, right? And it's great when we talk about an Airbnb or an Uber or others, but for so many of our small businesses, I think that journey just seems such a long way away, or so unobtainable. But actually working with and learning from someone, whether it's in the sector or that's done something, just ahead of you or better than you, it can be a really, really valuable learning experience. And so I also think we should shout out more in this country, not just about our superstars, entrepreneurs that have really taken those businesses international and to the next level, but frankly, those growth heroes across the country who are still breaking new trends, growing their businesses, and frankly showing that it's all possible, and the impact that you can have, because we know that small businesses learn best from other small businesses, and they learn best from other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's really interesting about the importance of peer groups. Tell us how important it is to have an established business network.
Oh, yes. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because I feel really passionately about this. And I think this is really incredibly important. And so with 10,000 small businesses and now, starting with Help to Grow, one of the key components is building a thriving alumni community, right? Because we all know that once a business has been through, a 3-month, 4-month, whatever the time period is of the core course, your business still keeps growing. You still keep having challenges. They evolve and they change, and you need that continued learning, and you need that continued support. And so what better group than to have that through your peer community, right? Because again, they're shared bonds of trust. You've all been through a shared learning experience. You've all got a similar framework. And so we spend a huge amount of time, and we're starting this now as well with Help to Grow, nurturing that network, right? And because that's where much of the magic comes through. I mean, we've now got businesses that have known each other through the programme and socially and through our continued alumni events and engagement for over a decade. And therefore, the new businesses that are born from that, the new ideas that happen, the support that keeps them going when they have a rough time. We're always conscious about taking our businesses, if we're doing a big event or so forth, we're always conscious about taking them, out of the business too much. But then they consistently say to us, no, it's so important having that network and that space, and their peer group. So for me, network is critical, and supporting it in a smart way it leads to, I think, really, really phenomenal. 2 plus 2 becomes 5 because the talent happens. Michael, I can see you wanting to leap in.
No, I'm just thinking about what you're saying, because I think, at a very practical level, networks are recommenders, they're referrers, they are your extended friends and family, if you like. And you had Ollie on the show. Ollie's one of the co-founders of Startup Britain, and you would be hard pressed to find a more networked person. In fact, I think Wired called him the most networked man in Europe, didn't they? I think anyway that was one of his accolades. Don't think he wrote that himself, but anyway, he might have done. But the point being is that there's that saying that reputation casts a long shadow. Well, actually, your network is a very important part about how your reputation is created, because it's the people that will speak for you, vouch for you, and be part of your extended friendship circle. So I think that I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about when they go into business, because they think, well, I've got a product and I need to sell it, and if it's good enough, that should speak for itself. But I'm not sure that always holds true. I think you've got to have ways of actually spreading the word about what you do, and actually having the people that will stand your corner. And I think a network does that. And
I think it's both organic, much to your mentoring point, Michael. But I think we also have to be pretty deliberate about it. And so doing that kind of, core stakeholder mapping and being really disciplined to stick to it, I think is absolutely front and center. And networks, they happen organically, but you do have to work at them. And Michael, I agree with everything that you said about their importance. But the advice that I would give to any small businesses listening out there is really work them and map them and be very thoughtful about how to use them.
It's a good exercise, that, by the way. It's a good exercise. Just get a blank sheet of paper and think about the people in your universe, and you can do it through circles, in terms of put headings against it and sort of put and it's incredible actually, when you start that process, what you suddenly learn about yourself and the kind of network of connections you probably have,
and the ideas, Michael, that generates, right? So actually, the excitement about putting two people that well together, and then that creates something new or a different idea, is ultimately what keeps us alive and spurs that process of innovation.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. Find out how Northumbria University can help your business thrive through the Help to Grow management programme. Delivered by leading small business and enterprise experts from Northumbria University, with the support of leading figures from industry and experienced entrepreneurs. The programme supports senior managers of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their business's performance, resilience and long-term growth. The 12-week programme is 90% funded by the government, and the fee payable by participants is £750 and has been designed to allow participants to complete it alongside full-time work. The in-depth, high-quality curriculum supports you to build your capabilities in leadership, innovation, digital adoption, employee engagement, marketing, responsible business and financial management. By the end of the program, you'll develop a business growth plan to help you lead your business to realize its potential. To find out more about the program, the modules, eligibility and fees and delivery dates, go to northumbria.ac.uk/help-to-grow.
You're listening to today's episode of Why Small Business Matters. I'm Sarah Stevenson and joined by Matt Sutherland. Today we're talking to Charlotte Keenan, from Goldman Sachs, and Michael Hayman. I was wanting to move on a little bit. I know you're offering advice about networking there and practical things that will help a business, but also we talk a lot in Help to Grow about your vision as a business and building your brand and how you can really push your business forward on that basis. And I know, Michael, particularly in your line of work, that's fundamental to how you relate to companies and how you help build their campaigns. I just wondered whether you've got any advice for businesses, perhaps who don't have a budget to go to a comms agency to do that for them, how they can really think about their own stories and build their own brand and value on the basis of that.
Customers want to know what you stand for. I mean, I think that is an increasingly important characteristic of who we choose to spend our money with and the goods and services. And I think that the rise of good companies is not by accident, because in a hyper connected world, it's very easy to understand and to form an opinion about the sorts of businesses that you might work for or shop with. And I wrote a book called Mission, which looked at actually, a big part of this is that you're building belief. And so what people believe in it really does matter, because it matters as a colleague. Is this a good company? Are we doing things the right way? It matters in terms of your reputation. And so you can either do it, leave it to sort of luck, or you do it by design. And I think, in many respects, starting to think about what it is that you actually stand for and what your mission is. I mean, I think a lot of people say, oh, well, that's fine if you're a certain type of business because, you can do that. But I would always challenge that. I think every business was built on an original mission to do something. The question is, have you articulated it? Have you captured it? And then ultimately, do you choose to communicate it? So, I feel that we are in absolutely a major moment now in terms of higher expectations from people about business, rightly so. And I don't think that's just about very large companies. I think this is about all companies. And so I think it's in your own self-interest to start to think about what you stand for, and it's in your own self-interest to talk about it, because you can benefit from that in terms of ensuring that you are setting the record straight in your own interest and actually promoting the values that you believe in and stand for.
Yes, I would underscore all of that. And I think it matters for customers, and we increasingly see that. I think it matters in terms of your workforce and retaining and inspiring and motivating and ensuring that fundamentally everyone is on the same page as to what the company is and what the end goal is. But I think it particularly matters for the next generation. And we see, as I'm sure every business out there is seeing, is people want to work for a good employer. And so when people come to Goldman Sachs, and we're fortunate with the number of applicants that we have every year, but people care about what we're doing in our communities. They care about how we're showing up, and they care about our values. And so the advice that we give to our businesses on 10,000 small businesses and Help to Grow is start at the outset, right? Because it's far easier to know what you stand for and know who you are as a small business setting out than having to kind of retrofit that exercise when you've got 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees or whatever the number may be. And the other piece I'd say is make it authentic. Right, and lean into authenticity and lean into what is true, and do something that fits as a business, because then it works and it becomes an automatic part of the business's DNA, rather than manufacture something too artificial.
And I think listen as well. I mean, there are increasingly immediate ways of understanding what your market actually thinks, so whether it's things like Trustpilot or TripAdvisor or whatever it might be, is that, I mean, a lot of retailers will turn around and go, well, I don't agree with that, or I don't like it, but they are like the pulse rate of how people are feeling about a business. And I think that you have an opportunity to think about the feedback that you're given. I mean, that's the sort of, really interesting thing about living in a digital age, of course, is that, feedback's pretty instantaneous, and understanding about how you connect. I mean, all businesses can really understand that these days because there's no shortage of opportunities to sort of communicate. And I think that thinking about how you harness that and use that to get better and to improve is an important part about what an activated mission actually allows you to do.
Today, we know that sustainability is really important to existing and any prospective customers. But how important is it to be sustainable?
I'd answer that question, Matt, in the first instance, because it's the right thing to do to be more sustainable. And I think that that you don't need a pat on the back for that. You need to see that as that if you're in a leadership position, you're empowered in your own way to make a difference and make a contribution. The second thing is that I think it's increasingly the direction of travel that the market will go in terms of, we've just had our first experiences of 40-degree summers. They've not been great experiences for an awful lot of people, and actually there's a great deal of concern about what that might mean in the future. So I think the very practical questions that are now being asked are, well, what can you do to make a difference? And of course, we're speaking in the grip of an energy crisis where, I think there are very visible symbols of companies, how they're using energy, how they're are they leaving their lights on all night, all those sorts of things that I think are right out there, in terms of actually sort of very practical demonstrations. But I think there's also quite an inspiring one, though, which is that I do think that when you look at the story of innovation tends to come from small firms, and then it is larger firms that can take it to the next level and globalize it quite often. But it is usually the spark of invention will come from those small players. And when you look at so many of the sorts of opportunities in sustainability right now, they are about providing answers to the way that we relate to the planet, and that we treat its resources more sustainably. But at the same time, we don't give up on the things that have delivered progress and have delivered the lives that we all live. So those are commercial opportunities for the right businesses as well. And I think that sustainable answers are going to be where, if you're looking for the unicorns of tomorrow, those unicorns are going to be delivered by companies that come up with those answers. So I think vested self-interest right the way through, the right thing to do and the right way for you actually to build your business.
And starting at the outset, right? Again, just underscoring that the earlier that companies embrace this and think about how they're going to tackle it, what it means, and again, underscoring your point there, right, Michael, innovating around it, is it's easier to turn a small boat than a tanker, right, and a lot cheaper, starting at the outset.
And they talk about it in tech terms about the differences between businesses that are born in the cloud and those that have had sort of decades of legacy. And for a lot of small firms that are starting in 2022 and beyond, it is much easier to be a net zero business if you start, to Charlotte's point, from the get-go than if you are a 20-30-year-old business that is having to look at everything from supply chains to all sorts of different practices. So stars, you mean to go on?
We'd quite like to ask you a couple of questions, actually, about whether you can provide some practical advice to people listening to the podcast. So one of the things that comes up time and time again when we're talking to participants that Help to Grow is recruitment and retention, the skills gap. Maybe they're not necessarily in a position at the moment where they've got much choice. There aren't that many candidates coming forward for roles. I just wondered whether there's something that you can say to some of our listeners that are really struggling at the moment to recruit, whether it's graduates or perhaps, apprentices for their business.
Yes, and I think this is a very, very real challenge, but I also think it ties very directly onto what we've just been talking about. The workforce has changed. The pandemic has exacerbated a huge amount of that. People, values matter as people look to what they're doing, and so the business showing what you're doing in terms of who you are, going back to our values discussion, picking up these key points of sustainability being a core bedrock of the values of the business. Diversity, again, I think is absolutely front and center. It's something that we haven't touched on, but I think is as important the business are thinking about this in a smart way, as part of the broader sustainability agenda. But ultimately it gets to the point of why would someone want to work for your company, right? And why are they going to work for you than the next person? And yes, benefits and salary is obviously a factor, but fundamentally it's what is their belief in your company? And so it goes, as Michael, you were talking about, very powerfully in terms of brand. It is, what is the brand of your small business, and what is someone going to get from working from a small business that they're not going to get from a much bigger firm or a more established role. And so that's where it's incredibly exciting. As a graduate joining one of the small businesses on our program, you're going to get to learn fast, participate in strategy. There will be a whole host of different challenges, but also challenges are the opportunity for invention. So I think it's for me, it's that small businesses have to be bold and emboldened to really make the case for themselves as exciting, dynamic employers. That my own recruiting team here would kill me for saying this, but that they offer something very different and very, very exciting that you're not necessarily going to get in a long established big firm.
The job of the employer is to create conscious environments where people enjoy spending their time, and I think that's far beyond frankly pool tables and table tennis tables. I mean, this is about actually allowing people to sort of a sense of ownership in the work that they do, a sense of belief that what they do matters, and being part of a team that believes it can make a difference. And I think when you look at it like that, the job of the small business leader is to show their team that they can win on their terms, right? And I think that creates esprit de corps, and it creates connection, and it creates meaning. And those things don't stop people ultimately taking a choice that they might want to go and see the world or whatever they might do. I mean, nobody should believe that just because you have a good culture that it leads to the fact that people will stay for 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, those practices of people only having one job for all of their life, I mean, those days are gone, and I think rightly so, and for the good on the whole. I mean, it helps people in their lives to have a lot of different experiences. But the job I think of the employer is to create the best conditions they can, to create the best connection that they can with their teams, and that creates retention. I mean, but these are tough times for business, and there is a definite shortfall of people who have decided they want to do different things, and I think that's a bigger challenge to business as a much bigger community, large and small, to show that it has real sort of I suppose purpose and jobs to do that require a lot of people to give their energy and times and talent to it to help it actually fulfill.
I wanted to ask Charlotte actually about your 10,000 Women, Goldman Sachs Women. I did a podcast recently with the Millen charity in the West End of Newcastle, which is a really deprived area of the town, the city, and over in Gateshead. And they work to support women set up their own businesses. So it's women entrepreneurs who come from very diverse backgrounds, but a lot of ethnic minorities and so on. And I just wondered whether how you were involved in that with the 10,000 Women in India project. Well,
I mean, I can talk about this for hours because I feel incredibly passionately about it. So in the last couple of minutes, like in a nutshell, 10,000 Women is our sister program to 10,000 small businesses. It's global, and it focuses on giving female entrepreneurs and female business leaders the skills that they need to grow, recognizing that there is a gender disparity, and also that they need capital. So we actually run a very significant capital facility with the IFC, which is part of the World Bank. And I think this, women in business at all levels, right, is something that we have to acutely focus on. We know that women have been, leaving the workforce at the fastest rate ever over the course of the pandemic, and that trend has continued. We know that the credit gap, and there's a global 1.5 trillion credit gap with female entrepreneurs. We know the contribution that women bring to business, how they put forward, and how they're fueling their communities. And it's also really, really, really hard being a working female, particularly I think at the moment, particularly when you think about just a very, very practical example, right? Cost of childcare in this country. So how is someone, and that's part of the reason, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the many reasons that we are losing women to the workforce. And so, I think that the Rose Review has done some extraordinary work on this, and I think Alison Rose has actually been a phenomenal champion here. And actually, I would encourage anyone to read the introduction and the executive summary of that report, just highlighting the very real challenges that women face, all the way through from cost of childcare to the broader aspects of care, which disproportionately fall on women, to the barriers that they face in terms of accessing finance, to the different nature of how we see again and again women embrace growing their business differently, not and that's just a reality. And that's why with Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women, we absolutely recognize and support that. But frankly, the challenge of what we need to do, and the focus in this country and globally that we need to afford to female entrepreneurs and female business leaders is very, very, very significant.
And I think if I can add to that and segue back into Help to Grow, I think that is a very practical solution also for a lot of women-led businesses to actually be a part of something. And I think that possibly one thing I would like to sort of re-emphasize through this interview is that what an amazing course it is. And Matt and colleagues at Northumbria are delivering it. If you're listening to this and you're a local Northumbria-based business, just remember it's a 90% government subsidised course. For the £750 you put in, there's a £7,500 investment in your business immediately then by the government. You get an incredible opportunity to access leading skills from the business schools, to become part of a cohort of companies and the mentoring that goes with it. We have only 30,000 places around the country for this course. So there is an element of carpe diem, seize the day. And I hope that more businesses do it.
Thanks again to our guests Charlotte Keenan and Michael Hayman. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, why not go to the Small Business Matters page and listen to some of our previous episodes. We talked to Mark Philpott at MPH Limited about how he pivoted after the pandemic. And we've also talked recently to Baroness Tanya Gray-Thompson about the duty of care in sport. This podcast is brought to you by the Help to Grow management team at Northumbria University. If you're a small business leader and you'd like to find out more information about how to join the programme, please go to northumbria.ac.uk/help to grow.